I once watched an American visitor at the Tower of London tell a beefeater, an actual ceremonial guard who lives there, that he didn't really understand the true history of the crown jewels. She'd read some book, apparently, and therefore believed she knew more than the man who'd spent 15 years guarding them. But here's the part that actually fascinates me. How did Americans become so sure that their version of British culture is more accurate than what British people themselves know? Some Americans will happily debate British people about what counts as real British culture, and I'm not talking about small things like tea versus coffee or which side of the road you drive on. I'm talking about people who have never set foot in the UK telling actual British people that they're doing Britain incorrectly. Like the whole country somehow forgot its own identity and needs an American to correct it. I'm not American, but I've spent enough time around both groups to see this happen repeatedly, and every time it's absolute, glorious chaos. You know that feeling when you watch someone stride confidently in the wrong direction, moving with such purpose that you momentarily doubt yourself? That's exactly what this feels like. Except imagine the person is also holding a map upside down and insisting you're the lost one. You're about to see what happens when someone watches Downton Abbey twice and truly believes they now understand centuries of British history better than the people who grew up in it. I've seen Americans try to correct British accents. I've seen them argue about tea with people whose grandmothers practically perfected the recipes being debated. I was once in a Scottish pub listening to an American tell a Scottish bartender that his own accent was wrong. His own accent. The one he'd spoken with his entire life. Apparently, incorrect. But the wildest part? These moments aren't just harmless slip-ups, they're delivered with full confidence. We're talking about people who will look a British person dead in the eye and say things like, "Our accent is the original British one, and yours changed later," not joking, completely convinced. I've heard this spoken out loud by a very serious human being. The confidence is the killer. It's never, "I might be wrong." It's always, "I read this somewhere once, so let me educate you about your own country." It's, "I'm 1/4 Irish on my mum's side, so I'm basically European." It's, "My great-great-grandmother was from Liverpool, so I completely understand the culture." And look, I kind of get it. People want roots. They want heritage. They want to feel connected to something older than themselves. But the way some Americans adopt British culture, remix it into something else, and then insist their remix is more authentic than the original, it's wild. It's like someone tracing your artwork, coloring it differently, and then claiming you copied them. Before we go further, you need to understand something. I once watched a woman wearing a cowboy hat and holding a red plastic cup insist she says maths instead of math to honor her heritage. I've seen someone argue about the correct pronunciation of schedule with a person from Oxford for 10 straight minutes at a professional event. And just wait until you hear about the American tourist who tried to correct a Londoner's accent while standing in actual London. That story is coming. Trust me, it's worth it. Because what happened next made me realize this goes deeper than I ever expected. I'm in a pub in Edinburgh with some friends, a mix of locals and travelers, and the place smells like old wood, beer, and the rain people dragged in on their shoes. This American guy in his 30s walks up to the bar and orders a pint. The bartender has a thick Scottish accent, the kind where every word sounds like it's pushing through gravel. And the American leans in and says, "You know, your accent is actually closer to how Americans sound than the English accent." The bartender stops mid-pour, looks up, says, "Sorry, what?" But the American continues like he's delivering a lecture. "Yeah, I read that American English is closer to how Shakespeare sounded. We kept the original accent, and you guys changed yours." The bartender stares at him, then at me, then back at the American. He says, "Mate, I'm Scottish." The American beams, as if this somehow proves his point. Exactly. That's what I'm saying. I have never seen someone miss a point so spectacularly while believing they were making a brilliant argument. Shakespeare was English, not Scottish. This man was trying to explain Scottish accents using facts about English history, and couldn't understand why the Scottish person looked confused. The bartender finished the pint, took the money and silently mouthed "What the actual hell" to the other bartender while staring straight at me. We shared a spiritual moment. A few months later, I'm in Boston at a cafe with a British exchange student named Emma. She orders tea, just tea, nothing complicated. The server brings her a mug of hot water, with a Lipton tea bag resting on the side like a lonely little flotation device. Emma stares at this cup the way someone reacts when they hear unexpected bad news. Her expression goes blank. Then a woman at the next table leans over, smiling like she's about to share a secret, and says, "Oh, are you British? I love British tea. I have authentic English breakfast at home from Twinings." Emma replies, "That's nice," in the flattest voice imaginable, but the woman keeps going. "You know, tea actually tastes better in America because our water is cleaner." I watched Emma's entire soul exit her body. "It just left," she whispered. "I'm sure it does," and didn't touch her tea. Not one sip. We left after 5 minutes, and she spent the next 20 minutes in the car calling it hot leaf water and explaining every detail Americans get wrong about tea: water temperature, steep time, mug shape, literally everything. The funniest part, 2 days later she sent me an article about authentic British tea culture, written by someone in Wisconsin. Then there was the World Cup incident. I'm at a sports bar watching England play. The place is packed with British expats and Americans who suddenly care about football, or soccer, for exactly 90 minutes. England scores, and the British section erupts, people hugging, chanting, spilling drinks everywhere. Total chaos. And this one American guy, wearing a Union Jack shirt with the fold creases still visible, turns to his friend and says, "See? This is what I love about real football culture. Not like those fake fans back in England, who only do it for Instagram." I need you to picture where this man was standing. He was in a Buffalo Wild Wings, in New Jersey, wearing a flag as clothing, calling the people actually from England fake fans. The level of self-unawareness was Olympic. Truly medal-worthy. Now you might think these are just funny misunderstandings, harmless mix-ups. And sometimes they are. But then you meet the Americans who build entire personalities around a version of British culture that doesn't actually exist anywhere on Earth. But even that wasn't the peak. That honor goes to what I witnessed at a British-themed restaurant in Los Angeles. This place was called Ye Old English Shop, with the kind of spelling that makes it look like a Renaissance fair sneezed on the building. Even the smell was wrong, like someone dissolved a Union Jack in cleaning spray and misted it over everything. I walk in and immediately notice the menu lists Yorkshire pudding under desserts. Desserts? For anyone who doesn't know, Yorkshire pudding is basically savory bread served with meat and gravy. It is not sweet. It is not a dessert. It's like putting French fries in the cake section. A British couple walks in behind me, and I watch their expressions slowly melt from confusion to horror. It builds like a slow-motion disaster. The waiter arrives, doing the worst fake Cockney accent I've ever heard, and says, "Hello, governor, welcome to proper Britain, innit? Fancy some bangers and mash with a side of fish and chips?" The British guy freezes. You can't have fish and chips as a side dish. Fish and chips is the whole meal. That's the entire point. The waiter does not break character. "Oh, we do it the traditional way here, mate. Just like the Queen loves it." The British woman grabs her husband's arm and whispers, "We're leaving." They turn around and walk straight out. Didn't even sit down. The waiter watches them go, shrugs, and tells the next group, "Some people just don't appreciate authenticity." At that point, I started laughing so hard I nearly choked. The menu even had authentic British cola. There is no such thing as British cola. It was literally just Pepsi in a glass bottle. A week later, I'm at a house party when someone mentions there are British guests. This woman immediately lights up and shouts, "Oh my God, I'm basically British too. My great-great-grandmother was from Liverpool, so I'm like 1/4 English." The British guy manages a polite "That's nice," but she's already rolling. "Yeah, so I totally get the culture. I love tea. I drink it every day. With milk and sugar. The proper way." He nods, trying to escape the conversation. But she continues. And I say maths instead of math. You know, to honor my roots. She says this while holding a red Solo cup of cheap beer and wearing an actual fringed cowboy hat. Meanwhile, the British guy's great-grandmother probably lived through the Blitz. Her great-great-grandmother maybe watched a Beatles performance on TV once. The contrast was art. He nods very slowly and says, "You're doing great, love." 4 words, delivered with the most polite contempt I've ever witnessed. His expression didn't change. His voice stayed calm. But you could feel the quiet judgment radiating off him like heat. Then came the pronunciation battle. I'm at a work conference filled with people from all over the world. Someone giving a presentation uses the word schedule. A British panel member says it the usual British way, schedule. Normal. An American in the audience actually interrupts the entire presentation and goes, actually it's schedule. That's the original pronunciation. The British guy calmly says, I'm from Oxford. The American fires back, right, but etymologically, the American version is closer to the Latin root. The British guy takes a deep breath and says, the word is French. Long, awkward pause. The American nods confidently and says, exactly, and Americans preserve the... He gets cut off. It's French, not Latin. It entered English through Britain from French. This debate went on for 10 full minutes. The presenter just stood there holding the clicker like a hostage. Someone even got up to refill their coffee. The American finally Googled it, saw he was completely wrong, and still said, well, language evolves. Not once did his confidence crack. Not even a flicker. Then he raised his hand again to ask about aluminium versus aluminium. The presenter unplugged the projector and walked off. But the absolute peak of all of this, the real gold medal moment, happened at the Tower of London. The actual Tower of London. In London. In England. I'm on a tour with one of the Beefeater guards, the ones in the red and gold uniforms who literally live inside the tower and spend their entire careers learning every detail of its history. This man has probably forgotten more British history than most people will ever learn. He's explaining the history of the crown jewels in this deep, documentary-style voice. Then an American tourist raises her hand like she's in primary school and says, actually, I read that the crown jewels were supposed to be sent to America for safekeeping during World War II, but Britain refused, and that's why they nearly got destroyed. The Beefeater stops speaking. He looks at her for a long moment and says, no, that didn't happen. She tilts her head and says, are you sure? Because I read it in a book. And here's the part that always gets me. Every single one of them read it in a book. Never the same book. Just a book. Somewhere. One time. The guard repeats, Madam, I've worked here for 15 years. That absolutely did not happen. She turns to her husband and says, loudly enough for the whole group, I don't think he knows the real history. A woman just told a Beefeater at the Tower of London that he doesn't know the real history of the Tower of London. The silence was thick enough to feel on your skin. Every person on that tour froze. The guard gives this tiny, perfectly controlled smile and says, perhaps you're thinking of a different war. The level of British passive aggression was so refined you could have spread it on toast. Standing there, watching it unfold, I realized something important. This whole thing isn't about facts or accents or who pronounces schedule correctly. It's about something much more human. People want to feel connected to something bigger. They want roots. They want a story that makes sense. Americans built their own version of British culture, an edited, romanticized copy, and then convinced themselves that their version is somehow more authentic than the original. It's like breaking up with someone, keeping their hoodie, wearing it every day, and then accusing them of being clingy. Remember that guy in Edinburgh who said Americans kept the real accent? I saw him 3 days later at a different pub arguing with an Irish man about how to drink Guinness correctly. The temperature, the glass shape, the pouring angle, he lectured him on all of it. The Irish guy just kept saying, okay mate, and taking slow, dramatic sips while staring at him. Some people wake up every morning and choose chaos, confusion, and confident wrongness. A month later, I'm at a meetup for international students. A British girl named Lucy is telling a small group about the difference between British crisps and American chips. It's a harmless, friendly conversation. Nobody arguing, nobody lecturing. Then a guy from the US jumps in and says, well actually, British English is just older American English. America kept the original terms, and Britain changed everything later. Lucy blinks at him. We invented the language. He waves his hand like he's brushing away a fly. Right, but you changed it. So technically ours is closer to how medieval people spoke. Lucy looks genuinely confused. Are you saying medieval English people said awesome and dude? Instead of stopping, he doubles down. Well, some words probably. Probably. That was his evidence. Lucy gives him a polite smile that says, I'm done, and turns back to our group. But he keeps talking about spelling, grammar, accents, everything. Eventually he walks away to refill his drink, and Lucy sighs like someone who just finished a surprise math test. She says, "I swear, Americans talk about British culture the way people talk about a celebrity they've never met." And honestly, she was right. Weeks later, I'm back home, telling my cousin about all these encounters, the tea disasters, the pronunciation debates, the Tower of London moment that still replays in my brain at night. My cousin listens, nods, and finally says, "You know what it is? Americans don't want to be British. They want to be their idea of British." And it clicked. They imagine a Britain made of cobblestone streets, polite sarcasm, cups of tea that magically fix everything, and people who all sound like they trained at a Shakespeare theatre. They picture top hats, royalty, rainy weather that makes you poetic, and pubs where everyone knows 12 centuries of history off the top of their head. It's like Britain, but with a filter on it. A few days later, I'm scrolling online and I come across a post from an American saying, "I'm basically British at heart because I love tea and rainy weather." Below it, a real British commenter wrote, "I waited for a bus in the rain for 40 minutes today. Do you want that part as well?" That's the thing nobody talks about. The romanticized version fades the second you hit a real British winter, or a train delay longer than your will to live. But here's the funny part. The British don't actually get mad. Most of the time they just look mildly confused, shrug, and carry on. It's their superpower. And every once in a while you'll hear a calm, polite voice, the universal British tone for, "I'm judging you respectfully," say something like, "Well, that's certainly one way of looking at it." Translation: I disagree with every molecule of what you just said. After everything I've seen, the tea saga, the historical arguments, the real accent nonsense, the Tower of London showdown, I've learned one universal truth. No one on earth is more confidently wrong than an American explaining British culture to a British person. And honestly, at this point, I wouldn't change it. It's entertainment. Pure, glorious, chaos-filled entertainment. The kind that makes you laugh, shake your head, and think, well, at least they're enthusiastic.